Hello and welcome to the shop. A couple of days ago I was sitting in my home office and I got an idea. And I ran out to the shop that evening and this is what I came up with. I love how these blanks look. Now they're really the same thing because I actually cut them off of one another. They're the same blank. But if I flip them, the contrast is really cool. And essentially I'm just taking 5 different sizes of walnut and maple blocks and gluing them up to give this pattern where the maple descends and then in the opposite direction, the walnut descends and they sort of fade into one another. And I've seen this before on a cutting board, but not on a pen, so I thought I would give it a try. And today, I'm going to show you how I went about making these blanks. When I cut the wood for these blanks, I didn't really bother to make sure they were the same width. I just went ahead and cut what I had. In the future, I will keep the blanks close to the same thickness, but what I'm going to do right now is just run it through the bandsaw and just remove some of this extra material so it'll make the blank a little easier to work with. From the batch of wood that I cut, I ended up making 3 blanks. Now these two are really identical. They are large walnut down to small walnut and then large maple down to small maple going in opposite directions. I turn them this way, it makes them look different, but they're truly the same thing. This was one that I kind of messed up. I don't know what I was thinking, but I had both large blanks, then next size down and so on and so on. So basically the blanks just descend in order, but I still thought it would look kind of neat. So what we're going to do is I'm going to trim the edge up or square the edge up just a tiny bit. And then I've got this piece of tape here. The tape I used for another project. It is 1/2 of an inch off the blade, and I've put a mark on it to make it 3/4 of an inch. So once I square them, I'll slide them over to the mark, and I could run them through the blade and cut perfect 3/4 inch blanks. Here's a quick shot of my 6 blanks. This one here has already been drilled and tubed. It's ready to get squared up and go to the lathe, and that will be appearing very shortly in a turning video. I chucked up one of my blanks. This blank started out, this was a 1/2 inch and it went down to an 1/8 inch, and this was a 1/2 inch and went down to an 1/8 inch. So the blank descends in different directions as the pieces are side by side. The tube was not long enough to have a 1/2 inch piece on the end of on each end, so I centered the tube best I could. I think it looks really nice, and I think it should make for an interesting blank. I am going to turn this entire blank today using my skew. Normally, you see me use a roughing gouge from start to finish. That really isn't the proper tool. A roughing gouge would be great for rounding this over, but the skew is a better tool for getting a clean cut, less tear out, and it's just a more versatile tool. It can do so much. I have been practicing. I'm getting better with it. I am not an expert. I may destroy this blank. We don't know yet, but we're going to give it a try from start to finish with the skew. I want to talk about a couple of quick things before I start. From the center of the skew down is where you want to turn. If you turn from the center up, you're going to get a catch. So I've been practicing really hard keeping my cutting edge below the center. And you can kind of see I had a line there on this side. I was using that as a reference for a while to make sure I stayed below the center. Something else you'll notice me doing in the video today, I'm going to anchor the tool to the tool rest. I'm going to let the bevel ride on the blank, and then I'm going to open the tool, the cutting edge of the tool up by turning it clockwise just a little bit, and that will open the cutting edge up and allow me to cut. So A, B, C, anchor, bevel, cut. Let's see how it goes. I just wanted to give you guys a quick look at the blank. Take a look at how smooth it is. Such a nice cut, no tool marks. It is not 100% true. There's still a flat edge there. I haven't finished truing it yet, but it's not going to take much, and this blank will be true. Take a look at that blank. Absolutely amazing. I am flush with the bushings at both ends, and I've got a super smooth finish, no tool marks. I don't think I need to start with the 100 grit sandpaper or 150 grit sandpaper. I think we'll go ahead and start with the 240 and just work our way to 400, and we should have a really nice looking blank. I will come back and show you what it looks like once I'm finished sanding. I started sanding with my 200 grit, and after a couple of passes, something hit me. If I don't put a coat of thin CA on here to act as a sanding sealer, this walnut is going to bleed badly into this maple. So what I'm going to do real quick is I've got some denatured alcohol, and I'm just going to go ahead and clean the blank before it gets any worse. You can see the denatured alcohol is already starting to evaporate. I'm going to let it spin for a second while I grab my thin CA and prepare to put one coat on the blank. The blank has been spinning for a while. It should be fairly dry. We're just going to hit it with a quick coat of thin CA. I will give it just a couple of more minutes to dry. It takes 15 to 30 seconds for that to soak in and dry, and we'll be ready to continue sanding here shortly. My blank has been sanded to 400 grit. I'm going to go ahead and get it on the non-stick bushings before I clean it and prepare to put the CA finish on it. That way I don't have to touch the blank and worry about oil or dirt from my hands getting on it once it's cleaned. I've got the non-stick bushings on the blank. Just going to clean it with some denatured alcohol. Shouldn't take long to evaporate it all since it had that coat of CA on there. The DNA will not be able to penetrate deeply into the blank. So I'm just going to give it a second to finish drying, and then we'll start applying our CA. My blank has been spinning to let the DNA evaporate. I put some blue tape on my finger. I'm just going to rub my finger back and forth on the blank. I'm just not putting any pressure, just lightly. That way, if there are any pieces of the paper towel that may be stuck to the blank, the tape will knock them off, and there's no oil or residue on the tape. So that should be good and clean. Now we're ready to go ahead and start applying our CA finish. First coat went on quite nicely. I'm going to go ahead and apply 4 more coats. Then we'll move from thin to medium. We'll apply 3 coats, and we'll take a look at how the blank looks. What we'll do is you'll see the reflection on the blank. It'll get really bright, and I'll be able to slowly rotate the blank and look at that reflection, looking for any grain or anything that might be below the surface that needs to be filled with the CA. If I see any divots or any grain, I will continue to add layers of medium CA until that disappears. I'll come back and show you what it looks like as soon as I'm finished with the CA. I forgot to turn the camera on before I showed you the blank, but I just finished my CA, and you can see it looks really nice. You can see a nice solid line all the way across the blank. I just pulled the non-stick bushings off of it, and you can see there's a fingernail. So we're heading over to the disc sander. We're going to clean that fingernail up. We're going to get it back on turning bushings and micro mesh it. I cleaned those fingernails off, and I've got this back on the turning bushings. we're ready to go ahead and micro mesh the blank. The trick here is not to use the micro mesh pads too long, the first couple of pads, because what you will do is you will take the finish right off of your blank. It looks pretty good, maybe just a tiny bit more. Just want to knock down, it feels nice and smooth, any high spots the glue may have left. Quick pass, maybe 4 or 5 seconds, that's all it takes. I'm going to go ahead and shut the camera off. We'll run through the rest of the pads. As we get toward the end of the pack of pads, there are 9 total, I will take a little additional time with the final 2 or 3 pads. I'm finishing up with the last 2 pads, and you can see how shiny the blank is starting to get. Of course, a little bit of that is the water that's on it, but it is actually looking really nice. A little too much pressure there. I'm working these last couple of pads extra long. Turn it off. We got 1 more pad to go. You can see I've got a nice shine on the blank, and I haven't even buffed it yet. Get this last pad going. You know what? Let me tighten her down a little bit. I think she's loosened up on me. Just going to work this pad. Don't be afraid to let the pads work on the bushings. It will darken your pad up a little bit. You can see the ends of my pads, but that doesn't really hurt anything. You want to make sure you get all the way down right where that component is going to fit. Now that blank is dry. Take a look how shiny it looks. It looks wet. That looks amazing. I'm going to get this on my mandrel. We're going to get our buffing wheels on the lathe, and we're going to buff this up. But first, I'm going to put some Renaissance wax on it. Way more than I needed on my finger there. I got a little bit too much. It doesn't take a whole lot. The problem is, well, there's not really a problem. With as much as I have, it'll just take a little bit longer for it to start pulling on the skin of my finger to where I know that the wax has been worked into the blank. It's not a big deal. More wax is not necessarily better when it comes to this Renaissance. You just want to get enough on there to get a nice coat on the blank and really work it in. Alright, that's feeling pretty good. Let's get the buffing wheels on there. Take a look at how that blank shines. Isn't that beautiful? Wow. This should be a relatively quick pin to assemble. You notice that my mechanism up front with the transmission and the nib is already together. This actually, up until about 5 minutes ago, was another pin. I took it apart to make this pin because I just wasn't happy with that one. So if I have a pin I'm not happy with, I don't let it leave the shop. I take it apart and reuse the components. I'm going to go ahead and remove both of my bushings from my blank, and we're going to use our deburring tool and put a little chamfer on the inside. Let me grab my brush and clean that out, make sure we don't have any residue or any brass pieces left inside that blank. I am not sure how well you can see that, but it's really shiny right there on both ends. That's the chamfer that I just put on the brass tube. I like the walnut for, I think, the top of the pin, and the nib section is going to be the maple. As I look at this, I don't see a flaw in this blank. This one actually turned out perfect, so it doesn't really matter where we put the clip. So this looks good to me. I'll put a bushing in the end to protect the maple. Let me flip this around a little bit. Get it into the vise or the press. There we go. Just want to get her started. Make sure, yeah, we're started a little bit crooked there. I need to straighten that up. There we go. Bring that up to the camera. Let me get a focus on it, and you can see we have a beautiful fit. What I'm looking for right now is, since that went on a little crooked, I'm looking for cracks along the top of the blank, and I don't see any. Got a great fit next to the cap. Super happy about that. Grab our nib, Flip this around and pull the bushing out. Bring it back up so you can take a look at it, and right there, take a look. This is what I always look for, the transition between the trim ring and the blank. And if you look at it, I'll get it up there. Look at the contrast of the black from the press. You don't see a lip at all. That is a perfect fit. Gorgeous blank. Not a flaw in that one. Turned out super nice. I love that. I really hope you enjoyed this quick little video turning this pen. I like the pattern. I think the trick with this pattern, walnut and maple are great contrasting woods, but I think the trick is to get some really amazing contrasting woods. What I'm thinking, purple heart and yellow heart. Would that not look sweet with that transition? I mean, just look how it kind of fades from large to small. I really wish I had the opportunity to have the full 1/2 inch blank at either end. It would make the fade look better, but the tube just isn't long enough on a Sierra style pen. Really happy with how that turned out. I'd like to thank you for joining me in the shop. I hope seeing this gives you some ideas about some custom pen blanks you can make in your own shop. I'd like to thank you for joining me tonight. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. Come back and see me again real soon, and have a great evening.